film was made in 1979 by a director called Jonathan Kaplan, who's better known for movies like The Accused and Bad Girls. Before this, he made a couple of sort of exploitation trucker movies, White Heat and Truck Turner, was it called?
Came out of the Roger Corman.
Yeah.
But interestingly, was actually a child actor and worked with Elia Kazan and Elaine May. Which
it's almost as if we've both been looking on the internet movie database, isn't it?
One could actually make an assumption.
You could mistake us for experts. But yeah, that's certainly true, and it's, you know, I mean, has everybody got an internet-enabled telephone here? Talking about it, we could all just.
You can just.
Let's see what else I can remember from my surfing session 15 minutes ago.
Exploitation,
it's
Isaac
written
Hayes.
by Charlie, how do you pronounce his surname? Haas, yeah,
That
who
sounds good enough.
wrote Gremlins 2: The New Batch. Man, my recall is really good. And Tim Hunter, who made River's Edge, which is another amazing teen movie from a bit later. But you know, this movie never had a proper release. It was completed in '79, and that was a sort of quite an amazing time for gang movies. The Wanderers and The Warriors had come out earlier that year in America, and The Warriors had caused all this trouble in cinemas. I'm sure there'll be trouble tonight. A lot of you look quite unreasonable and on drugs. So distributors were frightened of it because it's a teen movie, and I think it's probably the most realistic teen rebellion movie I've personally ever seen, for reasons I guess we'll go into later. But so it never got a proper distribution in the States. It sort of became better known when Matt Dillon became a huge star in the mid-'80s, as you say. So I think it had a brief theatrical release in the UK in the early '80s. It came out on VHS in the UK. I remember seeing it in a video shop in Stockwell, next to Explorers. That was an exciting release that didn't get a theatrical deal over here. It had a very peculiar cover with this weird-looking man sitting on a chair flipped backwards, who's not in the film. It's just some kind of weird model. And it looked like it looked very odd. But I remember it had a quote saying, "The best teen rebellion film since Rebel Without a Cause." So I took it out, being a kind of VHS junkie, and was amazed by it.
As opposed to a rebellious teen.
Yeah. I wasn't a particularly rebellious teen, but I was about 15 or 16 at the time. So that was my prime rebellious period. You know, magic mushrooms, very dangerous drug. I was using those once. I was drinking a lot, you know, sometimes a whole bottle of wine. Smoking weed, which you should never touch. It's very dangerous. But I guess one of the things, you know, I lived and grew up in South London in Brixton, and this movie, I would have seen it in about probably 84 or 85 maybe, which is the year of the second Brixton riots. And then I'd sort of, you know, I'd been around during the first riots. So it was a good time to see it. This movie includes a bit of a riot in it, quite famously. So I don't know, I felt like I kind of discovered it. No one else knew about it. No one had heard of it. It was in this weird sleeve that had nothing to do with the film. It was almost like a secret thing. And then it kind of vanished. You couldn't get it anywhere in the world. You could get it on VHS in the States. And I think only about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 2005, it finally came out on DVD in the States. But it's a brilliant movie, and it's Matt Dillon's first movie. He was 15 when he made it, 14 or 15, and he was discovered in just open casting calls. And all of the kids in this film are played by kids who are the real age. You know, it's not 20-somethings pretending to be 16 with heavy makeup and a close shave. They're kind of the real deal, and a lot of them cast from local schools. And a bit like what we tried to do in Attack the Block, the kids were very involved in costume and set design and the writing of the dialogue in this film. It was a very collaborative production. But it's always felt like this completely underappreciated, lost, and quite important teen movie. It has a big following in the States, a big underground following, most famously because Kurt Cobain claimed that it was his favorite film of all time. And if you look in his crazy scribbly diaries that they published, there's a page devoted to Over the Edge.
And it's supposedly the inspiration for the
The Smells Like Teen Spirit, yeah.
clip as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, supposedly, but I'm not sure about that.
I think that's a bit loose.
Yeah, I think more specifically, a lot of the grungy clothes people were wearing around then were influenced by the character Claude in this film, played by Tom Fergus, who you'll see wears an incredible array of dungarees and Hawaiian shirts and stuff.
I mean, one of the things that really fascinated me about it was the tonal shift in it, because it starts out in this very, realist kind of, almost like a proto-educational documentary, including, crime statistics in the opening kind of title cards. And then by the time you get to the end of this film, it's almost like you're in a John Carpenter Assault on Precinct 13 type horror film, and so it really shifts in the way that it works dramatically, but I think very successfully so.
Yeah. I mean, weirdly, when it was first released in the States, the distributors were so freaked out by it. The poster they devised looked a little like Village of the Damned. It had all the characters, all the kids in the film with whited out eyeballs within a sort of stop sign.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I don't get that. I think it's actually quite a political film in a very simple way. It's a sort of, metaphor for the position teenagers often find themselves in, and society's attitude and parents' attitudes to teenagers. And I think the situation that it presents, and the most interesting thing about the film is that the situation it presents is absolutely unchanged. In London, in any major city, you could take that opening scroll and you could apply it to what happened in London last summer, or, and I think out of all, maybe with the exception of If, I think it's one of the best sort of little metaphorical narratives to present cinematically the dilemmas and quandaries of being a teenager and being an adult, having to deal with teenagers and all of that.
One of the things I love about how the film sort of works with that as well is how teens communicate, and that very, very sort of tribal kind of thing that goes on. And here that's expressed, there's an amazing sort of set of sequences that revolve around telephone conversations. And it was just kind of really interesting to see these teenage boys, in their bedrooms on the phone. They're living in this community where there's, nothing to do in a sense but get high or talk to each other. And when you're looking back at something that's, made in the late 70s, and the idea of that kind of impulse for communication and where we are now with that, it's quite an interesting observation.
Yeah, I think for me the music is more important in the film. There's a terrific scene where the lead kid, played by Michael Kramer, puts his headphones on, goes up to his parents, and his parents are arguing downstairs, and he puts Cheap Trick on really, really loudly. Does anyone know Cheap Trick? Okay, so the music in this film is amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
And the director wanted to use a lot of The Who, but he couldn't afford it. And at the time, Cheap Trick were not a big band. They hadn't had a hit yet. And Pamela Ludwig, who plays, I've forgotten her character's name, the lead girl that the lead boy is falling in love with, Corey, she knew Cheap Trick and was hanging around with them. So she kind of she told Jonathan Kaplan about them. And this film kind of launched Cheap Trick, and subsequently, two of the tracks in this film became pretty famous, particularly Surrender. The music is amazing, and it has a particularly amazing use of Valerie Carter's cover of the 5 Steps, Ooh Child at the end, that was then referenced by John Singleton in Boys in the Hood. So the music is fantastic.
There's also that great scene where, he's just been beaten up and he's up in his bedroom. And is that a spoiler? No, not really. And
I thought someone was starting to sing the soundtrack there. I didn't know what was going on.
and the mother sort of comes up and gives him $5, like, here's something to take the pain away. But then he just puts, like, that is precisely what is wrong with this community. And his kind of the pain away comes when he puts the.
There's
the
another brilliant
headset
bit
on.
there where the dad says to the kid, "Look, just calm down, because your mum can't really take it. Go easy on your mum." And then later the mum says to the kid, "Look, just calm down, because your dad can't really take it. Go easy on dad." Which is good. Yeah, the stuff between the parents and the kids is fantastic. But it's the young actors themselves who are incredible, and they improvise a lot of the dialogue, and just how relaxed they are and naturalistic they are, I think, is amazing. Is anyone here like a fan of laughing at clothes in old films? I mean, I don't like it myself as a film goer, because I think, like, you probably are going to look pretty silly in 30 years. If you're a fan of laughing at clothes, there's some pretty amazing clothes in this film. I'd invite you to get over it after a few minutes.
The word midriff in particular springs
Well,
to
Matt
mind.
Dillon, he's showing a lot of good midriff, but there's a particular kid at the beginning in a Rush T-shirt tucked into a really slight pair of jeans that's, that for me is the peak of the weird clothing in the film.
I think as well, one of the things that's very fascinating about the way the film works in quite a subtle way around class as well, because this is a community that's kind of been built from the ground up and clearly very rapidly. It's a new place, and yet the film very carefully in the first sort of scenes establishes that there's a built-in class difference to this utopic world as well, which is kind of quite confronting, like the very different backgrounds of the two kind of main leads.
Yeah, it was based on a real article that I think Tim Hunter read in about 1973 in the San Francisco Examiner about youth delinquency problems in a place called Foster City, just in California, and he read that article and turned it into this screenplay with the specific aim to make an exploitation movie. This is explicitly an exploitation movie. It's supposed to provoke and shock and exaggerate certain facets of society, But yeah, I haven't really thought about the class issues in it. I don't really. I'll have to look out for that when I watch it.
They're not overstated, but I find that concept really interesting. That if you're building something from scratch, that you would still build in hierarchies and
well, there's an interesting thing.
differences.
These were new towns. They were built in the mid-70s, and Foster City, the town where the real story happened, was reclaimed landfill. And a little like new towns in England, they would just drop entire communities there, and they'd try and plan everything in this idyllic way. But they didn't really plan how to keep kids amused or how to keep the young people amused. And in fact, the suburbia that you see in this film then became the suburbia of, E.T. and Poltergeist. Spielberg's films are set in this same place. And this is one of the first films to put that suburbia on screen, I think. And interestingly, this was shot 10 miles away from where the Columbine massacre happened. It's the same area of America where the Breakfast Club happened. It's the same area of America where South Park is set. So if you want to go somewhere with disillusioned, misbehaving kids with fuck all to do, this is the place, and this is the film.